Hello everybody, it's Jama Malmi. Welcome to another scrapbook process video. This is a collaboration with the creative design team, and this month our topic is travel. So for my layout, I decided to scrapbook some photos of my sister's family and their trip to Hawaii. This is the second layout I've created for this trip here on my channel. I will show you the other one at the end of this video, so stay tuned. So first I want to just talk about photo placement. I have all of my photos laid out here, and the way I organize my photos I'm also going to talk about later in this video. So for my photos, the first thing that I notice is that I've got this kind of wood grain look up here, and I have that same color down here. So it would be nice to kind of draw your eye across the page and have those 2 points. However, this is sort of like a supporting photo, and it goes along with this because it was in the same location. So I kind of want to keep it up here by this other photo is what I'm thinking. And then these ones are all the beach kind of background and scenery. But it's not necessarily going to fit that way. So I'm thinking what I might do is put this one here with it. I have plenty of room to chop this down to 4x4, so I might do that and then put it in a flip flap. So if you've never seen flip flaps, this is what they look like. It comes in all sorts of sizes. This is a 4x4, so I just want to get an idea of what that's going to look like. This is a 3x4, but this is still going to fit right over it, and I'll still be able to hide that, and then that gives me a spot for journaling under here too. So I'm thinking that is the direction that I'm going. I could also use a 3x4 flip flap, and I could crop this photo down to 3x4, but then I'm going to cut out a lot of this background. And also, quite honestly, I have an idea for a stencil to use up here, and I want to have that full 4-inch width. I think that's going to look better. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, I think. And then over here, since this is going to be shorter and we're going to have this little gap right here, I'm thinking I kind of want to mimic that over here. So we're going to have a little nook here for embellishments or a title. We'll have a little nook here for another embellishment cluster. I can kind of overlap this a little bit. I did print this one at 5x7 because it was horizontal and it will fit nicely on my 8.5x11. But you could certainly print this at 4x6. I just really loved all the scenery and that gorgeous ocean in this photo, so I decided to print that bigger. So for supplies for this, I was inspired by the beach party collection. As you can see, I've already used quite a bit of this in my previous layouts. I'll show you all the layouts that I created with this at the end as well. And I've got a lot of the sticker sheet left too. I even have this sticker that says beach day that might fit right there, but we'll see. I'm thinking I might use a stencil there, so I'm gonna see how that works out. But I have all of these to play with. I'm thinking I'm not gonna use a whole lot of patterned paper, but I might use a little bit. And then I also have a bunch of these pocket cards left that I might kind of, toss a little bit in here and there. But the star of the show really is going to be this stencil, and it's really hard to see right here, so I'm going to show you in the catalog. This is what it looks like right here. It comes with this whole set of stencils. So they're all like travel and adventure, explore themed. This one is mostly water or tropical. And so we've got this like wave pattern. We've got this sunset pattern, and that's what I'm thinking I'm going to use up here. We've got hello sunshine, we've got some leaves, we've got some shells, and then we've got this little kind of wave border pattern right there. So I'm going to be using this quite a bit today, I believe. So let's go ahead and start playing. Since these are beach photos, I knew I wanted to do a similar treatment at the bottom of the page as I did in my last layout, which again you'll see at the end of this video. But I did this treatment of Kraft paper to mimic the look of sand. These are the only beach photos they really have. They did a lot of other activities, so I wanted to be sure to use this while I could. So instead of having the sand go all the way across both pages, I left that gap on the left to make it seem like sort of that beach entry, especially since it's below that photo of them walking on the beach. So I'm going to do a little treatment here, and I brought in my all-purpose mat, which will help me with all of the inking I'm going to do so I don't get ink all over my Versa mats. So I'm bringing in this stencil we talked about, and I'm thinking that I want the waves to peek out just a little bit over the sand, and I want to give them an ombre look. So I pulled out my blending brushes. I've got Bluebird ink first, and since the sand is going to be covering a lot of this, I brought that Bluebird up quite a bit more than I would have if it was all showing. On the left, where the sand is not showing, it is going to be all showing, but I think that this Bluebird really helps to bring out the sky in these photos because it's just so vibrant. There's a lot of different blues in these photos, and that's what I was trying to match with these inks. So I did the Bluebird, and then next I brought in Capri, and now I've got Lagoon. And so I put just a light coating of these. I was thinking I wanted just sort of a light inking of this wave, and I was really liking the look of that. Now here is the reveal. It's the best part. My stencil shifted a little bit, so I brought in the sand to make sure that it would cover that, and it did, although it wouldn't have been a huge deal if it didn't. And then I decided to add just a little bit more ink to darken it up a little bit. So we got the Bluebird and then the Capri again, making sure that I line up the stencil. I probably would have taped this stencil down if I'm doing this over again because I had to keep sort of making sure it was back in place. Now, one of the nice things about this stencil is that it will line up perfectly right next to it. So as you can see, the waves are lined up right next to it, and I'm going to go in with all of the same colors and do the same treatment. I also recently learned that these will line up if you stack them on top of each other too. So how cool would that look if you had this wave going across the side of your layout vertically? So when I pulled that away, I realized I did the inking a little bit darker on the left than I did on the right. So I brought the stencil back over to the right, and I'm going to add another layer of each of these colors to darken it up a bit. As I was doing this and lifting it up, I was realizing that it just wasn't matching up perfectly, and I almost quit and redid it, but I told myself, no, I can fix this. I can cover it up. Plus, when the ink dries, it really soaks into the paper and lightens up a lot. So as we get going, you'll see that you hardly notice it as the ink dries, but I will cover it up and I'll show you how I did that. So the other side, I did exactly the same. I didn't show all that, but just wanted to show you how it lined up. Now I'm going to trim my photos. This one, I did end up deciding to trim it to 4x4, just like I thought. And I used my little photo trimmer, which is super handy to trim these small photos. And I like the way that that is looking. I thought that there wasn't quite enough space and white space to rest your eyes on the sides of the photos. So I trimmed this 4x6 down just a hair. I think I took 1/8 of an inch off each side and the top. And so that just fits a little bit better. It's still snug, but I think visually it looks a little bit better. So now I'm pulling out those pocket cards I showed you, and I'm going through the different options. I'm thinking I want like not a full mat, but like little strips on the sides of this photo so that it's almost the same width as the 4x4 photo. So it's got the 4-inch width. So I'm going through these pocket cards. I'm really liking that one that I had set aside on the right. It's the right colors. I like that Bluebird color, and I like the shells and starfish and stuff that's on it. I think it's going to be a nice addition with all of the other patterns I have. So I'm trimming it to 3.5 inches tall. So there is 1/4 of an inch on the top and bottom. So it's just like this little strip. And now this is one of the beauties of the Versamat. So I work on this Versamat for all my layouts, even the 8.5 by 11, because it really helps you line things up. And this is case in point. I put the photo so it's right in the middle of 4 inches. And then I'm able to put these little wings on the side so they go to almost the 4-inch mark. I've got them like a 1/16 of an inch in. and then I can line them up and make sure that everything is perfectly even and straight. But once I finished, I decided, I don't think I want that much showing. I don't want it to be quite 4 inches wide. So I took about, I think it was 1/8 of an inch off each side, so it was just a smaller strip showing, and I like the look of that. Now we're going to do a little bit more stenciling. I've got this stencil out again and the sunset photo, or it could be a sunrise, not photo, stencil that I showed you earlier. And I'm just trying to decide on the placement. I was thinking about that beach day sticker and if I wanted to have it over on the right. So I did toy with having the sun on the left. So I decided to pull out the sticker, decide if it will work. First of all, decided it's not gonna look as good with the sand treatment I'm doing on the bottom. And then also realized that with that Y hanging down, it's going to cover the flip flap and that will prevent the flap from flipping. And we don't want that. So put the sticker back, I'll use it for something else, and decided to go with my original idea of the sun right here over the 4x4. I decided to use the honey butter ink. This is a new color and it is a really beautiful soft yellow. I just love it. So the yellow that's in the paper pack is Sundance and it's a bit darker, a little more orangey, and I wanted a softer yellow, so I pulled in the honey butter, and I will be adding just a little bit of the darker Sundance to this layout as well. This stencil also has these little birds that I thought were cute, so I took this little itty bitty blending brush to put some pewter gray ink on the birds, and I'll bring those in a few other spots later. So now I'm deciding how to add more yellow because this honey butter needs to be in more places on the layout to help you draw your eye around the page. So I decided to mat this one photo in honey butter, and I was toying with matting the other photos, but decided since, especially the photos on the left, I didn't have a whole lot of space, I didn't want to have more mats. So that's the only one that's going to have a mat. And so that's going to draw that color down a little bit, and we'll bring it in other ways as well. The stamp set I just showed you is my new favorite in the core catalog. It's called Background Elements, and it has this stamp that is absolutely perfect for creating a sand texture. So I've got Toffee ink and I'm bringing this in to create that sand texture. And keep in mind that the ink soaks into the paper quite a bit. So as it dries, it's going to dry back to a much lighter color. The nice thing about this stamp is it's very forgiving. You can overlap and create as much texture as you want. I then took my ink pad and just went right over the tops of those sandbanks to create some extra texture and dimension. This is really easy to do and makes a big impact. I actually wish I had done it on the last layout where I did this technique, but I didn't think of it at the time, so I was really happy I remembered this time. And then I took my fingers and kind of ruffled up the edges to create more texture, and then yet again, even more texture, visual texture. I've got my gold shimmer brush, and I'm dipping it into some toffee ink to create some toffee splatters with gold flecks. My toffee shimmer brush, of course, arrived today after I created this layout as I'm posting this video. So next time I need toffee, I will have a toffee shimmer brush. I'm bringing in a couple of other shimmer brushes. I've got Bluebird and Capri to create some water splatters here. And originally I was thinking I wanted these water splatters just at the bottom where the water is, but then later in this video I'm going to add a few more at the top as well. You guys know me and my shimmer splatters. I need them all the places. So now I'm going to bring in my little sand banks and place them where I want them. I'll just place them so they're overlapping, and then I'll trim off the excess. I like having the double bank because it adds that extra visual interest and texture, and it just adds a little bit of something extra than having just one layer. You could even do 3 or more layers as well. So I had these little pieces of the bank that were left over that I had trimmed off. And so I decided to cut my title out of them and bring that color up to the top of the layout too. The dies I'm using here are called Block Alphabet, and they actually are on clearance on my site right now. They're over 50% off. I think they're $28, originally $69.95. So I'll link them down below because they are a super great deal and they're great for layouts. And now we have that Kraft color in the top, title, and the bottom, and then that wood color in some of the photos that I mentioned earlier. So I brought in some stickers, and then I remembered I had this sunshine arrow that I had tried using in other layouts and it hadn't worked. So I already had it stamped in Sundance, and so I tried that one just to make sure I liked it, and I did. So then I stamped it in the same honey butter yellow color as I did the sun so that it would match perfectly. One of the beauties of using close to my heart products, you know everything's going to match. And then I used the coordinating die that comes in the set to cut it out. This stamp set and die set, by the way, is the Beach Day scrapbooking set, and I will have everything I use linked down in the description below in case you are interested in anything. Now I turned back to my sticker sheet and I'm thinking I want to cover up that line from the stenciling. I found this sticker that says, "Sorry, I had a board meeting." And at first I wasn't going to use it because they weren't surfing or anything, but then I decided, you know what, that's okay. You don't have to use it just for a surfing layout. It just goes along with the beach theme. And there's a surfboard on top of that little bus that I have over on the right. I imagine that bus kind of represents maybe the bus that they took on some of the excursions that they did. So I thought it was just a fun addition and I liked the color and the composition of it. There were some other stickers in this set that I liked for kind of tucking into the sand. There were some shells, the flip-flops, and the sand castle. I liked those, but it didn't feel complete. I tried adding a starfish, but it wasn't the right color, so I'm still thinking on how I'm going to add something else down in those little sand banks. This umbrella was in the sticker sheet. I really liked that up in that little cluster. But the little bus I thought was just kind of floating, so I wanted to ground it and I thought I would bring over this little pattern that I used so it's drawn over to this side of the page as well, and I liked the way that it grounded that cluster. It needed some more yellow over here to make that visual triangle, so I just added a little bit of the honey butter ink in a little like splash of color behind the embellishment cluster, and I like the way that it now draws your eye across both pages. I ruffled up this little piece with my scissors, and now I'm going to glue it in place and complete this little cluster. I used thin 3D foam tape to pop up this little bus and a few of the other elements on the page as well, like the sunshine. I like adding thin 3D foam because it's not as dimensional as regular 3D foam. I really like that for scrapbooking pages because then my pages aren't too thick for the album, but it still gives some nice dimension and pop to your page. So on the other side, I still had that other little seam from the stenciling to cover. So I thought, well, I could tuck another little sand bank back there and maybe that will solve it. I had a little more of this Kraft. So that worked just perfectly. And then I'm going to end up using some stickers to cover up the rest. And now my seams are totally covered. I had to do that same treatment to that page. So I just did that with the stamping and the splattering and all that. And then I remembered that I had this Voice of the Sea stamp, which was August's stamp of the month, and there was this little starfish. So I decided to bring a little bit more of that darker yellow onto the layout with this starfish, and that will complete those little scattering clusters in the sand down there. I liked it stamped onto this pattern paper, which is in the Beach Party collection, and it just adds that extra little bit of that orangey yellow down in the layout and completes these clusters. I inked around the edges of them with the honey butter ink, and I was trying to show you there. I don't know if you can tell, it really does make a big difference to ink around that. It was super quick and easy to do and just kind of finished it off. I put these each on a little thin foam dot and stuck them down, and I think that looks really cute. Here's where I'm adding a little bit more splatter on the page. I just used the Capri up at the top, not the Bluebird as well. I just thought that it was a little bit plain for me. But if you're not into splatters or shimmer, then you certainly could leave all that off and this would still be a very cute layout. So now I'm going to show you how to attach the flip flap. I've already put my page in a page protector, and then this flip flap, you're going to slide your photo in so that the adhesive is on the top. You're going to fold that flap back and you're going to stick it right over your photo. So I like to line up the photos so the photo is on top of the photo under it, and the actual flip flap, there's a little bit of plastic up further, but everything is lined up nicely. And then I'm going to create a custom journal box for the inside of that. I'm just deciding on the paper I want to use. Ended up using a pocket card that has some journaling lines already. And I don't foresee myself needing the little scene that's at the bottom of either of these cards. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to cover that up. So I cut this 4x6 down to 4x4. I wanted to bring in that shell and starfish pattern once again for a cohesive look. So I just repeated that at the bottom of this page, trimmed off the excess. And then I had a whole bunch of torn Kraft pieces still. So I just added that to the middle as a seam and voila. So I'm going to add this little piece from another pocket card on here. And while I do that and show you the close-ups, I wanted to talk about how I went about organizing my photos for this album for my sister. So I like to take a look at all of the photos that I have, kind of take an inventory, and I do that digitally just on my phone and kind of sort out in my head, okay, how many photos do I have total? How am I going to organize them? So I decided to do it by activity. So I've got like beach day, snorkeling, pool at the hotel, and then the different excursions. So it's not necessarily divided by day, but you could certainly do it by day. Decide if you want to do all 4x6s or if you're going to have a mix of sizes. And then that helped me decide what size album to do. So I decided on an 8.5 by 11, which you see here, the other layout I've done so far. And I thought that the photos that I had warranted an 8.5 by 11. I had too many for a 6x8 or 6x6, but not enough for a 12 by 12. And I really like the size of an 8.5 by 11 because you can put them up on the shelf with the rest of your albums and they kind of don't get lost, but it's not as bulky as a 12 by 12. So again, this is that other layout that I created. I used distress oxides and several inking techniques, and I will link this in the description below, as well as at the end screen of this video. Now I'm going to share the other layouts that I've done. These all have process videos on my channel that I will link below. These all use the Beach Party collection. To finish my thought on how I organize vacation photos, sometimes I add photos from vacations right into my family albums. If our vacation was maybe 3, 4, or 5 days, I can do that in 2 or 3 layouts and put them right in my family album. So if I do a longer vacation, maybe a week, those really warrant their own album, but oftentimes we do shorter vacations, so I put them right into the family album. So I hope that some of these tips help you as you sort out your vacation photos, and that these layouts that I'm showing you give you some ideas. These last couple I'm showing you are pool and water park theme, but they certainly can be used for vacation photos or as inspiration for anytime photos. So I hope that you got some good ideas from this video, and if you did, then be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I post scrapbooking videos every week. As a reminder, the creative design team has all posted their travel themed videos. You can find that in the playlist on the left, and there's another video you might enjoy here on the right. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.